Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to the first iLead of the semester. I'm Kathy Hawks, our Senior Associate Dean for External Engagement. We are so happy to be co-hosting with the Sloan Women in Management group today, so thank you for your partnership. I am delighted to be joined by three MIT graduates today. Our moderator is Professor Nelson Repenning, who earned his PhD from MIT in Operations Management and System Dynamics. Joined by Martha Samuelson, Sloan Fellows, class of 1986, CEO and chairman of Analysis Group, and Rebecca Kirk, MBA 2002, managing principal of Analysis Group. Two items that you need to know for housekeeping. We will have a fireside chat up here at the front of the room, and toward the end of our time, we'll open it up for audience participation and questions, so be filing those as we go along. We'll also be recording today's session, and for registered attendees, we'll be distributing that through Sloan groups. Now for a more formal introduction of our three speakers for today. So Professor Nelson Repenning is the faculty director of the MIT Leadership Center, School of Management, Distinguished Professor of System Dynamics and Organizational Studies, and his work focuses on organizations and how they can effectively implement change and leverage new processes and innovation. Martha Samuelson is the CEO and chairman of Analysis Group and one of the largest economic consulting firms in the US. They have a special relationship with many MIT faculty, work together on projects and many cases across the school. She is a successful leader whose expertise in antitrust, finance, and valuation has shaped economic and financial analysis in complex legal disputes. Her leadership at Analysis Group has been marked by innovation and growth, guiding the firm to support clients facing regulatory investigations, merger review, and litigation. During her time at Analysis Group, the firm has expanded their position in litigation across antitrust, finance, intellectual property, and healthcare, both in the US and around the world. The firm has also developed a thriving non-litigation practice in the areas of health economics and epidemiology. Martha's analytical work has influenced hundreds of matters, including significant cases for the DOJ, MasterCard, and Microsoft, just to name a few. Rebecca Kirk is the managing principal at Analysis Group. She is a renowned expert in the field of economic consulting with deep expertise leading the development of economic and market analyses. Her expertise spans a broad range of matters, including antitrust litigation, intellectual property, false advertising, tax issues, both in the US and internationally. Rebecca is co-founder of the Analysis Group Survey and Experimental Studies practice. Her analytical skills and testifying experience have been invaluable to clients and colleagues alike in a variety of industries, including online travel, social media, airlines, and credit cards. It is a total treat to have Martha and Rebecca join us today. Over to you, Nelson.
All right, thank you, Kathy, and welcome to both of you. It's great to have you back, and I have to say, I always feel a measure of professorial pride because Rebecca was a student of mine many, many years ago. I do feel a little bit cheated because I have gotten a lot older since then, but you don't seem to have changed at all. It seems a little unfair, but so be it. As you'll see as we talk today, Analysis Group is a really special organization, and we want to dive deeply into that. Among other things, they hire a lot of our graduates and provide some outside employment for several of our faculty. But before we get there, as kind of a warm-up, there's lots of people in the room today that I think are thinking hard about their next career step and the trajectory of where they're going to be post-Sloan. So I'd like to start with both of you, just a little bit of a short summary of kind of how you got to the roles that you are in today. And actually, Rebecca, why don't we start with you since you're at the far end.
I'm also the most boring, I think. So we'll end on a high note. I worked at Analysis Group starting right out of undergrad, so I think it was 1996. And there was an orange piece of paper on the wall, and it said something about economics, litigation, healthcare, and consulting. And I thought, worked at a law firm for an internship, and I used to work in the summers at healthcare consulting company, and I was an econ major, and all I thought was maybe they'll hire me because I had no idea what we did. I had a great opportunity to meet one of my lifelong mentors and closest friends on the first snowy day where I interviewed, and I thought
also a Sloan graduate.
Also a Sloan graduate, yes, and a major reason I came here. and just really influential person in my career. And I liked her immediately, got the job offer, canceled all my other job interviews, and then came to the firm. After about 6 months, I figured out what we did. I definitely didn't know what we did when I interviewed. And then I came to Sloan in no small part because the people I considered my closest mentors and inspiration for what I wanted to be when I grew up all had gone to Sloan. So Martha went to Sloan. Almudena, who interviewed me, had gone to Sloan. One of my closest friends that was a peer, was just a couple years ahead of me, had gone to Sloan. So I came here. And at the time, we didn't have a robust return offer program, sponsored return offer program. And I just thought,
You were our second.
I think I was,
Yeah.
yes. And my friend that was 2 years ahead of me was our first. And I really wanted to come back. And so I was thrilled when they said I could, but I had not even thought about like, what was my title? How much money was I going to earn? What was the career path going to look like? I just knew I wanted to go back. So when I was then thinking about what to do next, I had a lot of friends that thought I had gone crazy. No one should pursue their job future in this uninformed, lackadaisical way. And this was in 2000 to 2002 was when I was here. And that was a period of time where stock options were being given out like candy. It was before the telecommunications bubble had burst. And my classmates were all looking to these big brand companies that had special opportunities. Actually, many of us started at Google when it was still largely unheard of, and we did a Silicon Valley tech trek trip, and everybody, this is what they wanted. So I decided, all right, I'm gonna do my due diligence. So I went to all of the career fairs, I went to all of the dinners for potential consulting jobs, I went to the investment banking interviews, and I talked to many of my classmates, including 2 that are sitting here in the front row. What did you do at your job? What did your boss do at your job? How much autonomy did you have? What did you like? What didn't you like? And the more I talked, the more I was certain that what I wanted to do was to go back to analysis group. I've had a lot of opportunities to be entrepreneurial at the job. My job's evolved a lot, not just in my responsibilities, but each day, what am I doing? Who am I working with? What kinds of cases am I working on? What are the challenges I face? And so I've been really lucky because when I was young, I thought someday I want to be like these people who were my mentors. And I've been fortunate enough that they helped me grow into that job and have treated me with a valued, respected position at every title I've been in. And so in many organizations, you have to leave to find the next challenge, or you have to leave to get the respect and responsibility and compensation that you deserve as you progress through your career. And at Analysis Group, we try to keep those opportunities available to people internally. And so that's why I say mine's boring. I got what I wanted, and I did it in a linear way.
I didn't think that was boring. Well, I got to where I got to just in an incredibly non-linear way. Lots of you will have similar paths, I think. Nelson and Rebecca reminded me that when I was 10, I wanted to be an FBI agent. I'd forgotten about that. I sent a letter off to the FBI, I do remember, and oddly enough, I didn't hear back. But I went to Yale. My father was an economist there. He wasn't the famous economist. That's actually my father-in-law. But I was there, and so I didn't want to get near economics because I didn't want to get near what my father was doing. I got so I graduated as an English major, went off to law school, and I started practicing law, and I really didn't like it. I found I didn't like the arguing. I didn't like the way in which people reasoned. I don't think at the time I realized that I really preferred thinking in an empirical way. I liked it if you needed facts to support it, and you don't quite in that same way with law. So I didn't know what to do, and I did what many people do. I thought, I'll have a baby. And then I came here to Sloan at the end of my Sloan Fellows time. I had a second baby. And I thought, I don't really know what I want to do, but I really want to keep my hand in doing something. I really want to work part-time. And so, this was at a time where the world was a lot less receptive to this. I interviewed with a ton of people who said, you must be another wonderful mother, and then I never heard from them again. But I got a job at an economic consulting firm, and to my real surprise, I just fell in love with the activity. I just found it really interesting, really rigorous, really applied. The clients were willing to spend a lot of money having you think about the arguments that could be made for one side or another. That company was where I started and where I fell in love with the field. But I also learned a lot of things, which I think many of you will, by being at a company that I think was not very well run. And that company had some business practices that were really different from us at Analysis Group. So the company had office P&Ls and practice area P&Ls, and it meant one part of the business could be incredibly busy and the other part of the business could have nothing to do, and that left a huge mark on me. And then also I found it a very just transactional firm. So I decided I wanted to look around. I came to Analysis Group. At the time I had a job offer from Cooper's as well, and Analysis Group was just really small and shaky, but I really liked the founders, and that was just a very early lesson for me. Go with your gut. Sometimes something will look like the smartest thing to do, but your gut's telling you a lot of information, I think, about what will really work for you. It's just been a wonderful experience for me. The founder really mentored me and sort of pushed me along. I guess I became a partner in 1994. In 1995, the company was about $30 million in sales, and the founders asked me would I run half of it. The other half ended up folding, and we've just had a wonderful, wonderful experience. And, for me, the parts of my management philosophy that I think I didn't know this was what I was doing. Most of the time, I'm just putting one foot in front of the other. But I really found this issue of running the firm as one firm. It's a lot of work to do that, but it's been central to how well we have done. And then running the firm, thinking about the long term, has been the other thing that's just been a core way in which we think about everything we do. And there are many times when something would be expedient to do today and just make life much easier. And we just don't do that. We don't want to be transactional. I think for both of these, and then I'll stop talking, what undergirds them is running the firm as one firm means you really have to trust each other, because you have to believe that maybe if somebody calls me about a case, I think Rebecca would be better to work on it than me. I have to believe that I'm going to get treated fairly in that sort of one firm environment. I have to believe we can all cooperate, that we can share what's now turned into a very big labor pool, that we can treat people fairly, whatever office they're in, whoever they're working with. That's hard to do, and it's very valuable. But you need trust to do that. And then I think the other thing about the long term is you can't really measure contribution to the long-term health of the firm in any particularly quantitative way. You can certainly measure how much work has somebody sold or how many hours have they worked on cases, but the contribution to building the organization in the long term is very squishy. And people who work here have to trust, again, that they're going to be treated fairly for what they do to build the firm in the long term. And so that's just been what's unusual about us, and I think very much why we have done as well as we've done.
So, fabulous. And I want to do a deep dive into exactly that structure, but as just maybe another preamble, I imagine for most people in the audience, at least before they got to Sloan, they didn't even know what economic analysis consulting was. Not sure I did. So just tell us a little bit, we'll start with you, Martha, what Analysis Group does, and then for both of you, just tell us a little bit more about how you're organized. I know you have dozens of partners, you've been enormously successful, and then we could start to get some of those pieces sort of pulled together.
Okay, so 3/4 of economic consulting is, that could mean anything. What we happen to do is, for 3/4 of the firm, is we support expert witnesses in very big lawsuits in economics and finance. So for example, all of the tech company lawsuits that you've been reading about recently, Google were involved working with the company on every major stream of litigation. So that's the search litigations, that's the ad price litigation that just started, and that's the Epic litigation with the developers. Every big litigation that you read about in the country we're likely to be involved with. One of the ones that I just loved was we worked for Twitter recently when Elon Musk tried to back out of the Twitter deal. And every day he came in with a new reason why. And so every day we got a call. Now you need to find a lawyer, an expert on Indian divorce law. Why? I don't know. Now you have to find a solvency expert. Now you have to find an expert on how whistleblowers are treated. And it just was really fun and really a blast. And then 1/4 of what we do is non-litigation, and that's health economics and epidemiology, as was mentioned. And that's been a fascinating growth area for us. Some of the work there that I'm particularly proud of is, not surprisingly, when during COVID, when the government wanted us to wanted needles to go in 300 million Americans' arms, they wanted an incredibly robust safety surveillance protocol. They wanted to be very sure, is anything happening that shouldn't be happening? That's a complicated topic because, of course, people are going to get heart attacks and are, independent of whether they have COVID vaccinations. So we did that work for Pfizer for the emergency use authorization, final authorization here in the US and in Europe. It just was such an unbelievably motivating thing, as you can imagine, for all of us to be part of.
So Rebecca, why don't you give us a sense of how you, from the org chart on down, how this is all held together and is so successful.
So I mentioned I came in right out of undergrad, and you probably have some classmates that had the similar starting point at Analysis Group. Those are the people who are really in the data. They're pulling the data into a structured format, or they're leveraging the data in ways that allow us to see patterns and pull those things out. So that's on the empirical side. On the other end of it, they're doing research and trying to understand what did the document say? Do those dovetail correctly with the assumptions we have about how the organization works? So Martha talked about the Epic Google litigation, and so we had people who were looking at app prices, app usage, trying to understand who was setting the prices. Was Google setting the price for the app, or was Epic setting the price for their own app? Did they get a benefit from being put first in the app stores? What happens when someone changes the pricing? How do people respond? There's a group that comes in after business school or after a PhD program, and I think in our partnership we're pretty close to 50-50 at this point, PhDs and MBAs.
Another 50-50 you might mention that we're very close to,
Yeah, we're
Rebecca.
pretty close to 50% women in the partnership, which was not the case when I became a partner. Definitely not the case when Martha started running the firm.
No, not at all.
Which gives you a sense of how many women have gotten promoted recently, maybe more than 50-50. But it's a nice mix because we have people who are focused. I'd say that the group of people who do the best at the firm, at the level of sort of associate and above, up to Martha's and my position, are people who were on the fence. Should I get a master's in statistics or should I get an MBA? Should I get a PhD or should I go to business school? Should I get a master's in public policy, or is that not empirical enough? So we want people that kind of straddle that world of really thinking that data and analytics help you answer questions better, whether that's a focus on finance or economics or statistics. Martha mentioned that that was kind of what drove her out of law and into our side of the table. So the associates are helping to organize those teams and break down problems into bite-sized pieces so that individual associates or analysts, that's the person right out of undergrad, can do something. Both of those groups get a lot of formal training on how to do the work. They get trained on how to make good Excel files, how to write SAS programs, how to scrape data with Python, how to write R code. I'm sure there's programs, I don't know what they're called anymore, because fortunately I don't like that part of the job, so I don't have to do it anymore. Then the next level is really, it's managing people. How do we teach people to be good managers? And one of the things that hasn't changed over time that's really at our core is what is described as an apprenticeship model. So Martha would be in a meeting with me, and she wouldn't just show me what she was doing or give me feedback on my document and help me repair my document, make it more clear, or my email, write it better. She would tell me why she was making those suggestions, and she would debrief me afterwards on how she handled the problem, a conflict with a client while I was listening. And for me, I think that hands-on experience, observing it in the real world, was the most informative. But the firm's gotten bigger, so we supplement that now in ways that we didn't need to early on with a pretty robust how to be a manager, how to do client calls, how to manage risk portfolios, why are contracts important. And so there's a whole array of formal training programs that we have that cover not just these programming skills that the junior people get trained on, but the softer skills of how to run people. And then you can move around. There's a lot of self-sorting. Who do you like working with? What kinds of cases do you like working on? Where are your strengths?
Rebecca, if I can just...
Please.
That's one of the advantages of the one firm as well, is that people really do move around, and they, there's the substantive areas that you might be more interested in or less interested, but there's also this question just of work style that is so important. As Rebecca said, with the apprenticeship model, you really get trained in how do I, the senior person, think the work ought to be done? Am I intense? Am I calm? Am I all of that stuff? And it's a huge benefit of the one firm is that an awful lot of personal sorting can occur and in ways that are valuable.
Yeah, actually, I think that's a perfect place to end, that you sort of come in one place and you can find your career path going in any direction that really fits for you and the firm at that time.
Yeah.
So from talking with both of you, my impression is that you have grown extremely successfully in a fabulous firm, but without many of the trappings that you would normally associate with a larger organization and less bureaucracy. So Martha, in your role as the Chief Executive Officer, how do you hold this all together, and what parts do you have as structure? And you alluded to trust in your earlier remarks. Tell us a little bit about how you use that glue to keep everything moving forward.
It's just such an interesting question, and it's such a moving target for us, because as the firm gets bigger, there are things that we have to hold on to as tightly as we can, and there are things that we just have to adapt to the size of the firm. It's interesting. It's something that the partners talk about a lot. So right now we have 85 partners. We're a little bit under $900 million in sales, and that's big. We can't just sit in a room with 8 of us and figure it out, and we have to have that continue to work in ways that don't paralyze us or don't have small groups of people sort of making, we have to be able to continue to have constructive discussions and solve problems as a much larger group. And again, in the context of the one firm being so important to us. I think one reason why firms don't continue with the one firm is that it's hard to do. It's much easier to just fragment the management down and have sort of silo. But we see so much benefit out of it that we want to hold on to it as long as we can. We keep trying to come up with management innovations. We didn't, way back when, we didn't have a formal performance evaluation process. And one of the partners came to me and said, "Well, I think we need to do this." And I said, "What are you talking about? We give feedback all the time." Of course he was right. And of course that was something we needed to do and has been wonderful for us. Right now, I think as a partner group, we spend a lot of time thinking about how can we we call it, how can we keep the runway in front of us? Because we, again, with 85 partners, it's interesting. There are very few decisions I can make on my own, or Pierre Cremier, who's the president, can make on his own. I can't make somebody be a partner on my own. I think that's wonderful. But it means that we have to think a lot about how can we have a group of 85 people function in an effective way. And we've come up with some management innovations. Every partner is involved in a partner committee where we, depending on what interests them, what part of running the firm interests them, some are interested in the HRE part, some the finance part, some the foreign offices, whatever. I think that's really helpful to us in terms of having the partnership be cohesive and the firm be able to be agile with this number of partners. We can make a job offer fast through a partner committee if we need to. We can act on something. I think we also we're just such a high-touch organization. We spend a lot of time not just socializing together, we have lots of partner offsites and time, but we also spend just a ton of time on just one-on-one meetings, all of us. I think to make the 85 partners continue to trust each other and to be able to work together and listen to each other as 85, we just have to spend a lot of time together and a lot of one-on-one time together. And then something that I was talking about earlier with Rebecca and Nelson is we've tended to be a fairly unconfrontational partnership, and I think that's something we also have to modify as we get larger, because it has to be a situation where it's comfortable for all of us to disagree. We tend to have done most things unanimously as a partnership, and it's clear to me, and I actually intend to say at the beginning of our next partners meeting, that this is something I think we have to adapt as we are larger now. We have to be able to disagree with each other in a non-personal, non-confrontational way. And sometimes we're going to have to do things where we don't all agree. We're going to have 60 of the partners think, let's go here. 20 of the partners think, let's go there. So I think that's just, to have the firm keep working in the ways that are valuable to all of us, and we think bring out the best in each other, we have to continue to just tinker. I think your word's experiment, Rebecca.
Yeah, we have a new board member who was at a law firm that was trying to adapt. And one of the things he noted was that success comes from the willingness to say that an experiment you tried failed. And it takes a lot of the pressure off of trying to make it perfect before you advance forward and try it out, to call it a pilot program. Let's just see if it works, get feedback from the participants in whatever form makes sense, and then adapt, because you're not going to be able to anticipate the upside or the downside of anything that you're trying out. And one of the things I've really valued is that experimentation, and it's a word that I hadn't used until talking to this new board member, is something we've always been encouraged to do. You think there's a better way to do it, you're a young person, you've never done this before for us, give it a shot. I'm willing to listen, I'm willing to take a look, and that's been true at every level that I've been in, including in firm management. These partner committees didn't exist until a few years ago. They've been a great innovation. We're thinking about opening an office. Let's see if there's a value proposition there. Can we start building some demand? Is there enough supply of talent? If there is, let's go for it, and the willingness to pull back if we were wrong.
I think of that as so much of my job is hire great people, encourage them to be entrepreneurial, get out of the way. And I think that's really important. For me, it's always, the question always is there somebody who's going to be a champion? Is there, nothing ever goes easily. I remember when the partner who started our healthcare practice, also a Sloan graduate, came to me about it. He had done some study on depression and what were the economic costs of people with depression not being sufficiently treated. And he was talking to me about it, and you are out of your mind. This is not going to be something that will go anywhere. Well, now it's a quarter of the firm, and it's an enormously important and sort of differential vertical that we have inside the organization. But he was willing to fall down along the way and be a champion and deal with the bumps in the road that were going to occur. And that's what I sort of look for in terms of, is this an entrepreneurial activity that we ought to be investing in? Is there a champion?
So 2 more quick questions, and then we'll go to audience questions. So number 1, just talk a little bit about how you weathered COVID and maybe more important, the lessons you learned in terms of getting through that. I know we had talked about job security earlier when we were getting ready. So okay. I don't know if Rebecca, if you want to start.
Well, it was stressful. You're in the office one day and the next day everyone needs to get a computer monitor at home. That was hard. I think several things made AG different. 1, we didn't have any layoffs. But not only did we not have any layoffs, we didn't rescind any offers. And Martha and Pierre got us all on the phone, and when I say all of us, I mean 1,400 people on the phone.
Each in their own closet in the back of their house.
Or in the bathroom or wherever. To assure us, we didn't do layoffs during the recession 1, recession 2, recession 3. We're not doing them now. That was very reassuring and helped us remember that we're in this for the long haul. The second thing is that we started doing monthly partner calls so that we could tell each other where's something soft, where are things strong. Our healthcare group didn't miss a beat. Thank goodness for our HEOR practice that was started with depression, because that gave us a steady base around a noisy, uncertain litigation practice, because no one really knew how to do a trial remotely. Nobody knew, could you do a deposition remotely? Not everything was easy. The tech companies were coming at us pretty fiercely with lots of money. They were doing the best that they'd ever done. If you look at the stock market, it really was driven by like 5 companies over the last decade. And so they were coming fast and furious for our very well-trained, very competent employees. And we really just doubled down on the culture and the long-term focus. But I was mostly a recipient. I know you and Pierre had even more conversations with our IT group and our finance group and our HR group on how to weather that storm. So I don't know, Martha.
So the firm-wide calls that Rebecca, I think a lot about what happened, as we all do, and what worked and what didn't work. And what didn't work at all, I found, was sort of the fake fun, like get everybody on a Zoom and share baby pictures, or do you know who these people are? It just wasn't a good time for that. And there was a lot of that people thought is going to feel collegial, and it didn't. The thing that really mattered that we started very early was sharing information in a way that we just don't routinely do. So the first phone call we made, firm-wide phone call, I actually hadn't been planning to say anything about no layoffs. We really never have had one, and we weren't going to. But I worried, am I making a commitment that we won't be able to honor? And then I suddenly thought, literally in the middle of the phone call, if I don't say this, there's not another thing that anybody on this call is going to hear, because everybody is aware that the business has slowed down substantially, particularly on the litigation side. And that's all they're going to hear. And so I said it. And I think that was a hallmark of going through COVID. We started to share information about the busyness of the firm, what we call the utilization of the employees. What we sell is time. That's how much time we are selling. And we started to share information about the lead flow inside the organization, because everybody was just so scared. And when the business did start to pick up that June, I wanted to be sure people had the facts so that they would believe me. This is really true. You really are, your job really is safe, whether or not you are busy, because here are the facts. Here's the busyness of everybody. Here's the revenues that are coming into the firm. That sharing it that way seemed really important. We also just really started to think about sort of the whole person, because everybody was just so scared. Because of our healthcare practice, we have a lot of connections with, infectious disease experts. And so we actually had somebody come on staff essentially as a consultant, and we had presentations to the entire firm maybe every 3 months, something like that, on what are the new facts about COVID. We all got to learn about wastewater and all these things nobody wanted to know anything about. But we had her available, and people followed up with, just very nuts and bolts questions about their kids and vaccinations, and is it safe to go to this state or to that state, or it just everything as it was evolving. And I think we felt a responsibility for just the whole person, because everybody was so scared, and we had a resource, which was access to these people that we could make available. We did great during COVID, after that first 3 months. And I was mentioning to Nelson that at the end of, I think it was 2022, Rebecca, we'd paid all the partners and we'd paid everybody in the organization well, and we had a lot of money left over. And so we decided we would give everybody who worked at the firm who wasn't a partner a $5,000 bonus. It's the most progressive thing you could do. It's a flat sum of money, so the less you make, the better, more bang you're going to get out of it. And so we did a lot of things like that along the way to just try to make people feel we are invested in you, we are caring for the whole you, we are, I felt very proud of how we did and how we went through all of that.
That's fabulous. All right, we have a few minutes for audience questions. Let's go right here on my left. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi. Firstly, thank you so much for coming here and providing us all this advice and wisdom. My name is Sid, and for the past 3 years, I've been working in economic consulting, actually, at one of these firms that operates a bit of a decentralized model, where every group operates in a silo, utilization targets are all siloed. And so the question I have for you is the challenge regarding making it a one-firm model, of balancing between diversity and unity. Because on one hand, you want a unified company culture and vision, but on the other hand, every expert has their own sort of working style, their own utilization expectations, et cetera. And that diversity is an asset in some ways. So how do you strike that balance? Thank you.
Do you mind? So I was attracted to Analysis Group because I could work for anyone in any practice area and try out everything. And I was like a kid in a candy store. I worked with our IP group in Texas, and I worked with partners that were doing ITC work in DC, and I worked with Martha on antitrust cases, and I worked on the Enron bankruptcy with the person who was my advisor at the time in our finance practice. And over time, I got to decide which groups made the most sense for me to collaborate with for exactly the reasons you're describing. Their work style, are they nighttime people or morning people? I'm a morning person, it turns out. I thought I was a nighttime person. I am not. I really like the complexity and diversity that antitrust provides. Other people love knowing the language of the finance cases. I really liked the personalities of the lawyers in mergers and acquisitions and consumer protection. So as I've moved up, I've self-selected with the lawyers with whom I work. And I actually have very varied preferences on the kinds of people who work on my teams. I like some people who are really empirical. I like people who are qualitative. To me, the right cohesion is by bringing a group of very differentiated people together and helping them leverage their strengths and stretch their weaknesses. Like, let's try and do something differently. Where the challenges come up, I think, is more in thinking about what are the prices you charge, right? So I work in two very diverse areas in terms of how much the lawyers are willing to spend. I work in M&A. This is mission critical. They are spending so much money on iBankers, we are not even a blip on their radar, but the work is intense and it's really complex. On the other end are surveys. Surveys are cheap. There's competitors out there that charge a third of what I charge for an hour of their time. The experts are worth a lot less money. And so I have to balance my time, how I structure the cases, how I do the work with people, how far I push the work down, and also where I say no. So I more often say no, even before I've interviewed. I'll say, well, what do you want to spend? And they'll tell me, and I'm like, I don't think that we're the right shop for you. Go call this person. And so I think there are ways to retain the flexibility and, in fact, to gain the knowledge. And I often learn from the more junior people on my projects different ways of approaching a problem, different techniques, different software programs, different articles that actually cut across finance, antitrust, surveys. And if we were siloed, we would lose that. And I, as an individual, would lose the diversity that's part of what I was seeking as a young person and part of the diversity that I really gained from as a senior person from learning from the people below me.
I agree with everything Rebecca has said. I just think it's hard to do. And
It's
I
time
think
consuming.
it's most of the reason why people have silos is it's a more straightforward way of managing an organization. You earn the money, you silo, you get to decide who gets paid what investments you make, all of that. It's much harder to do what we do, and you can't do it without trust, and you have to just reinforce the trust. You have to make, everybody believe it has to be right that my people are going to be treated just as fairly on my team as the people on some other person's team. It's just a lot of work, and you need to have a set of people for whom it's worth it and to put in the work and who are able to trust that this is going to be fair for them, for the people around them over the long term.
I think the proof is in the outcome also. So I am a person who came in in fact, I hadn't had my 22nd birthday. I am a partner at the firm, and I was able to move up without hitting a stage where someone was like, isn't that cute? You made it. Good for you, right? At each stage, someone said, you're my peer. And how many of us are in the partnership? We've got 85 people, there's 30 plus.
Yeah, for whom it was their first job.
Their only job.
Yeah.
And many more that came in at your level and never worked at a different firm. I'm talking about people who came in out of college and they never worked anywhere else, left to go to graduate school and affirmatively chose to come back. Our VP cohort's filled with them too. You can find the right path for you, but it is, we're about to go into, I think you've called it the submarine before.
Yes.
But we're about to go into our submarine, and going into our submarine takes a lot of prep, and we do it at multiple stages. So we think about partner promotions twice a year. We're about to go into that submarine. We go into a comp and general staff promotion process in the middle of October into December. It takes hours and hours of our time, but it's a chance to reinforce that we still believe in what should be compensated. Developing people, growing the firm's platform, sharing resources, sharing opportunities. We reinforce our culture every time we do this, but it is very time consuming.
Yeah. The other sort of tangible demonstration, I think, for us that this is working as it should is, so Rebecca talked about the front end. There's so many people, partners at our organization for whom has been their first and only job. And it's also the case that nobody leaves. None of the partners leave. We're in a very lucrative business and industry. Everybody is getting offered checks from everybody, and nobody leaves. And that's, again, something is working well. I think the other part of the one firm, I think it makes us more successful, but I also think there's just a lot of personal utility for all of us in it as well. That's a non-financial, incredibly important part that we all get out of being in the business, is that we've got these people who we respect and admire, who are our partners, because we're so focused on the long term. you're not really considered to be a successful partner until you've helped other people become partners. And we just get a lot of personal utility out of, being an 85-member family. And there's a little bit of that for us too. But that's independent of the sort of concrete, do we think it makes the business run better part.
Fabulous. So we probably have time for one more question. I will go on the left here. You had your hand up first, so we're going to go with the...
Thank you, and good afternoon. Thanks for your insights today. Devon, incoming Ember class member of 2026 at Sloan. Building off of the question around hierarchy, can you share a little bit about the internal infrastructure to knowledge share and gain insights that are coming, possibly not how that is shared up to the partner level as you're working on different cases? And secondly, like growth strategy, can you talk about focus around marketing, how thought leadership comes up so that helps with the partnership growth?
It's a really important, so you've got two different questions there, obviously. The knowledge sharing is something we think about all the time because, again, we're bigger. It was much easier when 8 of us would sit in a room and say, hey, I'm working on this or I'm working on that. We have a very active L&D team and we do a lot of knowledge sharing, but it's something we don't have practice areas for purposes of management, but we do have practice areas for purposes of sharing information and building skills, and that's an infrastructure we need to have. The growth part, I have been asked so many times, what's my 5-year plan? It's just not the way I think about it. I think about what we talked about earlier, which is encouraging people to be entrepreneurial. That's the most important thing that somebody in my role can do, I think. Lots of people are going to have better ideas than I do. And what I need to do is encourage them to experiment. Innovate and get out of their way and deal with the bumps.
I think she's understating what getting out of the way means. So we had thought about going to Europe, and several of us went for 2 or 3 years around the 2010 time period to London, and we started looking at opportunities in Brussels and in Paris, and then things started to converge. We got a lot of pushback, like, are you sure there's a big opportunity cost to these particular people spending time outside of the US? But we started to observe that we had good collaborations with people in those geographies and people who actually wanted to move there. And so these things come together, and now we've got 3 offices in Europe, and potentially we'll end up with more. But they're thinking about, there's a person who speaks a language, has geographic interest, has connections in those places, and there's a business opportunity. To Martha's champion observation. But then we need to make sure that it's structured. Do you have enough people? How are you going to keep people busy while you're building your practice? And so getting out of the way means let's make sure we provide them with enough infrastructure and enough support if we have the champion that's there. We're going to open a Toronto office. The business case came from, we started to see clients that were there, clients that want Canadian geographically centric people. Sometimes there's pricing considerations. There's also great universities that are there, and so there's an untapped labor supply. And we have a very senior person who just came out of an important regulatory role that wants to be there. The pieces came together, and we're open to the discussion. So I think this brick by brick, bottoms up approach is with deliberateness and support and infrastructure. That you need both directions. You need the entrepreneurial spirit, but we do it with the safety net of AG and a willingness to say, yeah, we tried it with that group or we tried that practice area. It's not ready for us yet.
So I'm going to slightly abuse my moderator authority and ask the last question. And I know we're right at the end of the time, but I know that you two have had a very long-standing and incredibly successful professional relationship. Any final pieces of advice about finding a mentor and being an effective mentor, particularly for all the folks here that are, in the early stages of their career journey?
I was interviewed by the New York Times. When was this, Rebecca? It was that, I don't think it's there anymore, Adam Bryant's corner office column that he had every month, week, whatever it was. And he asked me exactly that question. And what's been interesting to me, so I'm going to speak to the perspective of being a successful mentee, because those are very reciprocal relationships. A great mentee can make somebody who maybe is not such a great mentor an awful lot better, I think. It's a very much a two-way street. What I think is the most important thing, it's been such a hallmark of our relationship, is Rebecca would come to me after a meeting and she'd say, did I talk too much? Did I talk not enough? Did we wander off to... And I think make it safe for your mentor to help you, I think, is such a key way of proceeding. Don't make it hand-to-hand combat. Don't make it you're litigating. Just, if you ask, help me out here, how can I improve on this, in very tangible and concrete ways, it's an enormously effective strategy for moving your career forward.
I think people look for mentors based on observable characteristics.
Yeah.
They're like, you're a woman and you're 10 years older than me and we went to the same school. That does not mean we approach the world the same way. That does not mean I'm going to be the best mentor for you. It doesn't mean you're going to be a good fit for me. So be really open to who you mentor and who you seek to mentor you. In fact, in many ways, the people who are the least similar to me provide me with the most new ways of thinking. So I'm very fortunate. Martha and I have a lot of the same picadillos around our self-assessments. I have another mentor, Martha talked about him, Pierre, he's the president of the firm. He does not think about what he did wrong. He would never say, did I talk too much in that meeting? Unless he was told you should ask those questions. And having the two of them in my year-end review saying, did you think about this? And, oh, I can see how you thought about that, has been invaluable to me. And I try to keep in mind that sometimes what I'm trying to do is help someone think about it differently than the way they would normally approach a problem. And sometimes I'm trying to make them feel okay, that you're not alone. We all go through that. It's going to happen to everybody. But the mentee has to think about that too when they're going out to look for mentors. And I can only very strongly say, don't call someone and say, you went to Sloan, you're a woman, and I think you should be my mentor. I'm like, you've never met me. You have no idea who I am. And that doesn't cause me to think there's something interesting to say here. Now, calling me and saying, these things happen to you. I've done my research, and I understand these are experiences you had. I've seen you in the iLead interviews that you did with Nelson. And here's a question I have. And then if naturally the mentorship relationship comes up, that's great. That's a wonderful way to do it. But you're probably going to be surprised at who's the most valuable relationship for you in both directions. I learn at least as much from the people who think I'm advising them as they learn from me.
All right, that's probably the perfect place to stop. Thank you both very much. I hope you'll come back soon, so thank you.
Thank you.